Welcome to this exciting deep dive into one of the most fascinating treasures hiding in plain sight within everyday pocket change, the 1972 no-mint mark 1 cent USA coin, a coin that has captured the attention of collectors, historians, and treasure seekers across the globe because of its extraordinary rarity, its unbelievable errors, and the staggering fact that in certain conditions it can be valued at $600,000. Making it one of those remarkable pieces of American history that could transform an ordinary person into someone holding an item worth more than a luxury home. And today we are going to explore every detail, every possibility, every error and mistake that contributes to this jaw-dropping valuation. Because understanding the reasons why a simple penny minted in 1972 in Philadelphia without a mint mark can skyrocket in value requires us to look at not only the history of coinage during that era, but also the minting practices, the technical errors that occurred, the demand from collectors, and the cultural significance of rare coins that stand the test of time and become treasures hunted across the world. So let's unravel layer after layer of what makes this coin worth so much, and why you should always keep an eye on your change since that small copper piece might carry a fortune. The story of the 1972 no-mint mark penny begins in an era when the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents each year, with production running at extremely high speeds to meet circulation demands, and during this process, mistakes were inevitable, some of which slipped through quality control unnoticed and made their way into circulation, and it is precisely those mistakes, often called errors or varieties, that fueled the high values we see today. The most famous and valuable error associated with the 1972 no-mint mark penny is the doubled die obverse, a striking error where the design elements on the obverse of the coin, specifically the portrait of Abraham Lincoln and the inscriptions such as Liberty and In God We Trust, appear doubled due to a misalignment that occurred when the coin die was being prepared, and this dramatic doubling, visible to the naked eye, is one of the most sought-after errors in all of coin collecting, leading to astronomical valuations when coins in pristine condition surface. To put this in perspective, imagine an everyday cent that millions of people overlooked for decades suddenly becoming the focal point of numismatic auctions where competitive bidding pushes the price from hundreds to thousands and even to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is not speculation but a documented reality, with some 1972 double-die no-mint mark pennies being graded by professional services at near mint state 65 or higher, fetching prices upwards of $600,000 because collectors value rarity, eye appeal, and historical significance. Errors on this coin are not limited to the dramatic double die alone, since the minting process in 1972 produced many varieties including lesser-known minor doubling, die cracks, die breaks, filled dies, misaligned strikes, off-center strikes, and even transitional errors that occurred when the composition of the penny was changing during the late 1970s and early 1980s. And while the dramatic double die remains the star, even the smaller errors can add significant premiums, making every 1972 penny worth inspecting under magnification. One must also consider the role of condition, because in the world of numismatics condition is king, and a 1972 no-mint mark double-die penny in circulated condition may sell for several hundred or a few $1,000s, but an uncirculated or high-grade coin with blazing original luster, minimal contact marks, and sharp detail is where the real money lies, and it is these gems, preserved unknowingly in rolls, jars, or collections for decades, that create headlines when they are discovered and sold for six figures. The grading scale, established by the Sheldon system, runs from 1 to 70, with 70 being perfect, and coins graded MS-65, MS-66, or MS-67 in the 1972 double-die variety are incredibly rare and thus command those six-figure prices, while lower grades are still valuable but less astronomical. What makes the 1972 no-mint mark penny so captivating is not just its monetary value but also its role as a symbol of how mistakes and imperfections can become treasures, how an error in an industrial minting process becomes a story of human curiosity and history, and how something as small and overlooked as a cent can carry a narrative of immense worth. When collectors search for these coins, they often look first at the inscriptions, because the doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust is dramatic, with letters appearing almost like shadows or echoes beside themselves, creating a surreal and unmistakable effect that distinguishes the genuine variety from ordinary cents. And for those trained to spot it, the thrill of discovering such a piece is incomparable, often described by collectors as the heartbeat moment when they realize they are holding something extraordinary. Beyond doubling, another factor to consider is the presence of die wear and deterioration, because while some coins show mechanical doubling or die deterioration doubling, these are not the same as the true doubled die and are far less valuable, so education and careful examination are critical for anyone hoping to profit from these coins, and this is where coin grading services and authentication play such a vital role, as they not only validate the authenticity of the error but also assign a grade that heavily influences market value. The story also involves economics and psychology, because the demand for rare coins is driven not just by scarcity but also by the human fascination with owning a piece of history, with collectors often competing fiercely to own the finest known examples of a given variety. And when rarity combines with desirability, prices can reach astonishing levels, as seen with this 1972 no-mint mark penny. Many collectors and dealers today encourage everyday people to search their jars, rolls, and change for such treasures, and indeed there are stories of individuals finding rare double-die pennies in circulation decades after they were minted, instantly transforming their ordinary day into one of extraordinary discovery. To understand why this coin can reach the $600,000 mark, one must consider the trifecta of numismatic value, rarity, condition, and demand, and the 1972 no-mint mark double-die penny hits all three, as very few were struck, even fewer survived in pristine condition, and the demand among collectors remains intense, creating the perfect storm for record-breaking auction prices. Let's not forget that the Lincoln cent itself is an icon, first introduced in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, designed by Victor David Brenner, and over the decades it has become the longest-running design in U.S. coinage, making each variety, each error, and each significant year part of a larger tapestry of American culture and history. And owning a rare 1972 double-die penny is not just about financial value but also about owning a unique chapter in that history. Another fascinating aspect is how these coins serve as educational tools, teaching people about minting processes, die preparation, and the complexities of mass production, as well as the importance of attention to detail, because the very doubling that makes this coin valuable happened when the working die received multiple impressions from the hub that were misaligned. A technical mishap that left behind a permanent and collectible error. Possibilities for value also expand when considering coins that may have additional anomalies, such as planchet flaws, clipped planchets, or struck through errors where foreign material interfered with the striking process, all of which can further increase a coin's uniqueness and desirability. There are also instances of coins being struck off-center, where part of the design is missing because the planchet was not properly seated in the press, and while these may not reach $600,000, they still command significant premiums and make each coin a miniature piece of art with its own story. Collectors also value provenance, meaning the history of a specific coin's ownership, as coins that come from notable collections or are featured in well-known auctions often command higher prices, adding yet another layer of fascination and worth to the 1972 no-mint mark penny. Imagine someone in 1972 spending this coin on a cup of coffee, completely unaware that 50 years later it could be worth hundreds of thousands, a thought that illustrates the incredible unpredictability and romance of coin collecting, where everyday objects can become treasures with the passage of time and the revelation of hidden errors. As years go by, the rarity of high-grade examples only increases, because coins naturally wear down with circulation, and the survival of pristine coins diminishes, which is why coins in mint rolls or protected collections are so highly prized today. In many ways, the 1972 no-mint mark double-die penny represents the heart of numismatic excitement, the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, and the possibility of extraordinary reward. Next, 1982 1-cent USA coin, an incredible deep dive into the fascinating world of rare US pennies where history, error, rarity, and human curiosity combine to turn what seems like a simple copper coin into a life-changing treasure, and today's focus is on the 1982 no-mint Mark 1 cent coin, a legendary piece among collectors because of its unique background, its errors, its varieties, and the monumental fact that in certain rare conditions it has been valued at an astonishing $500,000, $500,000 for a coin that was originally meant to be nothing more than a small piece of change passed from hand to hand without a second thought. And yet here we are, unraveling how such a coin can command such enormous value, what makes it so special, and how you might recognize one if it ever crosses your path. Because knowing the details of this coin could mean the difference between dismissing it as just another penny or realizing you are holding a treasure that could transform your financial life forever. The 1982 year is particularly significant in the history of U.S. coinage because it was a year of transition for the Lincoln cent. The year when the United States Mint shifted from the traditional bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc to the modern copper-plated zinc composition consisting of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper plating, a change driven by the rising cost of copper at the time, which meant that the metal value of the penny was approaching, or even exceeding its face value. And this transition created an extraordinary set of circumstances where two different metal compositions of pennies were minted within the same year, and alongside those compositional changes came a number of varieties in design, weight, and appearance, which in turn opened the door to a range of rare errors and anomalies that continue to fascinate collectors today. The no-mint Mark 1982 cent was struck in Philadelphia, where pennies traditionally did not carry a mint mark during that era. And because so many varieties were produced in 1982, identifying the exact type of penny becomes crucial, since there are large date and small date designs, copper and zinc compositions, and within those categories even further differences depending on strike quality, die preparation, and minting mistakes, and it is precisely within this landscape of complexity and transition that some extraordinary rarities emerged. One of the most famous and valuable varieties tied to 1982 pennies is the 1982 no-mint Mark small date struck in copper, a combination that was never intended to exist in large numbers, because by that point the mint had already transitioned much of its production to zinc planchets, yet somehow a limited number of copper planchets were still used to strike small date dies in Philadelphia. And the result was an unintended, ultra-rare coin that has become a holy grail for penny collectors, with examples surfacing at auction and selling for thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on grade, and in top condition, with certification from professional grading services. Some examples are valued around $500,000, making them one of the crown jewels of modern U.S. coinage. To understand why this coin is worth $500,000, we need to dive into what collectors call the key factors of value, which are rarity, condition, and demand. And the 1982 no-mint Mark copper small date penny embodies all three, because only a tiny number were minted in error, even fewer survived in uncirculated condition, and the demand for them is extremely high given that the 1982 transitional year is such a critical moment in Lincoln cent history, and collectors are willing to pay premium prices to secure one of these treasures. Now let's examine the differences between the small date and large date varieties, because understanding how to tell them apart is essential for anyone hoping to identify a valuable 1982 no-mint Mark penny, with the small date variety showing a 2 in the date that curves more subtly and appears higher in alignment with the 9 and 8, while the large date variety shows a bolder 2 with a sharper curve and sits lower, creating a clear visual distinction, and this difference is magnified when compared side by side, though experienced collectors can usually identify it with the naked eye, while newcomers may need magnification or reference guides. Beyond the date style, the weight of the coin is another critical diagnostic feature, because copper cents from that era weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while zinc cents weigh only about 2.5 grams, and this simple test using a precise digital scale can be the quickest way to distinguish whether a 1982 no-mint Mark penny is copper or zinc, and for the copper small date variety in particular. Finding one that weighs 3.11 grams is the golden ticket that could mean you are holding a $500,000 coin in your hands. But condition also plays a massive role in determining value, because while circulated examples of the rare 1982 copper small date no mint mark penny are still worth thousands, it is the uncirculated, mint state, or high-grade specimens that bring the jaw-dropping prices at auction, with coins graded MS65, MS66, or higher selling for six-figure sums, and coins in the finest known condition breaking into the $500,000 range, because serious collectors and investors chase the absolute best examples, knowing their rarity will only grow with time. What makes the 1982 no mint mark penny even more fascinating is that the transitional year created an environment ripe for errors, so beyond the copper small date rarity, there are also examples of off-center strikes, double dies, die cracks, die chips, and other striking anomalies that add layers of interest and additional value, because collectors love coins that tell a story of minting imperfection. And when such errors occur on a coin that is already rare by virtue of its composition and design, the value multiplies dramatically. For instance, a 1982 copper small date no mint mark penny with a dramatic double die error would be virtually priceless, since it would combine two of the most collectible error types into a single coin, and though extremely rare, possibilities like this fuel the treasure hunt that keeps people examining their change in coin rolls decades after these pennies were minted. Think of the sheer odds involved. Billions of pennies were struck in 1982. But among them only a handful turned out to be the rare no mint mark copper small date variety, and fewer still survived in top condition, so the chance of finding one is astronomically low, yet it is not impossible, and stories abound of ordinary people stumbling upon one while coin hunting, making the dream alive for collectors everywhere. The fascination with this coin also ties into broader themes of economics and history, because 1982 represented a shift in U.S. monetary policy where rising metal costs forced a fundamental change in how the lowest denomination coin was produced, and in many ways the 1982 no mint mark copper penny is a relic of a bygone era. The last gasp of the traditional bronze cent that had been minted since 1909, and owning one is like owning a piece of that transition frozen in time, a tangible artifact that tells the story of inflation, economics, and adaptation in American history. Auction houses such as Heritage Auctions and Stack's Bowers have seen spectacular bidding wars over these coins, with collectors driving prices into the hundreds of thousands, and the publicity surrounding such sales only increases demand, making the 1982 no mint mark copper small date penny even more legendary, with each headline fueling new interest among both seasoned numismatists and casual hobbyists who suddenly realize their pocket change might contain a small fortune. Another aspect worth exploring is how professional grading services like PCGS and NGC authenticate these coins, because in a market where values reach $500,000, authentication is critical to prevent counterfeits or misidentifications, and grading services not only confirm the coin's composition and variety but also assign it a numerical grade that directly influences its market value, with higher grades commanding exponentially higher prices, and this professional validation is essential for anyone buying, selling, or holding one of these rarities. Collectors often advise newcomers to weigh their 1982 pennies carefully, study the date style under magnification, and consult reputable resources to determine if they have a small date copper variety, because the difference between a common penny worth 1 cent and a treasure worth $500,000 can be as subtle as a slight curve in the numeral 2, or a fraction of a gram on a scale. And it is this razor-thin margin between ordinary and extraordinary that makes coin collecting such an endlessly fascinating hobby. Imagine the excitement of an ordinary person one day emptying a coin jar, sifting through dozens of dull pennies, and suddenly realizing they are holding a 1982 no mint mark copper small date weighing 3.11 grams, a coin that could change their financial future forever. And that sense of possibility is what keeps the thrill of the hunt alive, because even though the odds are slim, the rewards are life-changing. Over the decades, the legend of the 1982 no mint mark penny has only grown, becoming one of the most talked about rarities in modern U.S. coinage.